So, welcome to How Do You Rescue a Disaster? So this is Frederick's watercolor canvas. This is a painting that did not go the way I thought it was going to go. I originally wanted the image much larger, but I was like, it'll be fine. Yeah. So I didn't like it once I had it finished, and typically when I use the Frederick's watercolor canvas, I can hose it off and the whole thing goes away. However, this painting has been here for a while, and watercolor will stain any surface, so it's now here, which means I need to take it off. So because it is canvas, that is one of the nice advantages about this. I can still rescue the board underneath it and reuse it. And all I need to do is put another piece of canvas over the top. So for those of you who are interested in being able to wrap or do your own canvases, if you have one that's in the round, which this is not a traditional stretchered with stretcher bars. This is a MDF. I'm going to turn this over. This is an MDF board. I had to have these custom made because at the time you couldn't get anything that was a round canvas that was also, let's see if I can show you this, it's also 2 inches deep, so it's a nice gallery wrap. The man who made it, he signs his work as well, because these are beautiful pieces of art. And as you can see, I'd already wrapped it. You can see the million staples. So let's talk about what you're going to need in order to wrap a canvas. So you're going to need, I've got my staple gun here. So I've got a staple gun. I have spare staples just for what I need to do. I've got my scissors. And then my canvas is on a gigantic roll, which you're not even going to be able to see the ends of because it's massive. So what I do is, the first thing I do is kind of get a gauge on how much canvas I'm going to need, because I'm going to have to wrap this all the way around. So I want to make sure that I can get over the 2 inch on either side. So I'm going to leave myself some space here and some space here. So about right there is going to be a good length. But now I need the other section. So I unroll my canvas to approximately where I think I'm going to need. I'm going to be checking dimensions as I go. And as you can tell, this is a super exact science. Nope. With many things that are art connected, it is not an exact science. Here we go. I'm going to move my mouse out of the way because it's getting attacked by the canvas as it attempts to control my video. Alright, so this looks like I now have enough. I may have a little bit more than I need, but I'd rather have a little bit more than I need than not enough. And I'm going to start to cut my canvas away from... Make a few adjustments, because normally I'm doing this on the floor, not on the table. And roll just enough so that I can cut where I want to. Now you do your best to cut as straight as you can, because obviously you want this to work out. And I'm going to cut all the way across. Even though I'm not going to use the entire length of this, I'm going to go ahead and cut all the way across. And normally, there we go. Normally I can get my scissors to just kind of slide all the way across. Well, that's not want to cooperate. Alright, there we go. Yay! One set of canvas. So I go ahead and cut the full length all the way across, and then I get an idea of what I'm going to need to be able to tuck in and around for my canvas. And I'm going to save the other section because I can go get stretcher bars that will accommodate the remainder of the canvas that I have, and I can use that to wrap another canvas. So nothing goes to waste. As an artist, you try to waste nothing. Everything that you have and are able to accomplish and do, you want to make do with his. You want to save everything, because supplies are not an inexpensive endeavor. All right. And then I get to have fun and do my best at cutting a straight line up this other side. And the reason you want to do your best to do this is because the last thing I want to do is have to repeat this process and do it again. So again, here's the strip that I have left over. I can buy like a 1 foot by potentially 3 foot stretcher bars and use this and salvage it to make a painting, not for this series, but it's still usable canvas. And I usually have a place in my studio that I store those. So now that I have the canvas that I'm going to need cut, I'm going to set that off to the side because I'm going to have to remove the old canvas. And that is going to end up being a far more challenging job than I really want, because when I staple these things in, as you're going to see, I staple it in really, really well. So I'm going to need another tool. I'm going to need to get something that's going to give me some leverage to be able to get these staples out. And so I will return just momentarily. I'm going to go borrow a screwdriver from my garage. Okay, so quick short trip. So I've got a screwdriver and I'm going to use that. Now, some of you may be also thinking to yourselves, well, why are you going through all the effort of removing those to take this off? Why don't you just wrap yet another piece of canvas? Why don't you just wrap it around the top of this one? Well, okay, yeah, I could do that. However, the problem with that is that now my canvas is going to be bulky. When I stretch my canvas, okay, I also, there's a process of getting it completely wet so that it gets really nice and tight around the panel. And it's not going to be as tight as I want it to be because I've got this existing canvas underneath. So I would rather spend the time to remove the old canvas. I'm hoping that once I can get some of these started, that I'll be able to pull some of these others off. However, to tell you that when I go in here and I staple a canvas on here, I don't hold back. I staple this sucker on here really well. So why round? Right? Why did we settle? Why did, while I plan this, why did we settle on this? Well, okay, so one of the other things that my mom and I have in common is that we would read a lot of what's sometimes referred to as depth psychology. These are folks like Robert Sardello, who's amazing if you haven't read any of his work. Thomas More, Gary Zukav. So it's philosophy, it's religion, it's a little bit of science, it's a little bit of everything kind of thrown in one spot. And part of that also then meant doing a little bit of digging into Carl Jung's work. And at the time, so keep in mind I'm doing this based off of memory because it's been a hot minute. One of the things that we came across was this idea of a mandala. And, we see them all over now. Coloring books and, tattoo designs, you name it. We see a lot of work that's done in mandala form. Well, when we were doing some of this research, we kind of looked into what does that actually really, what does that really mean? Being up to date on your tetanus shots, by the way, as an artist is always a good idea. I have dropped X-Acto knives on my foot. I have stabbed myself with metal objects, which is potentially going to be occurring again. We'll try to avoid that, but you know, it happens. Anyway, it brought us along to this idea of, as I said, Carl Jung, and the idea that a mandala is a way to contain who we are inside a circular frame, where you can incorporate the things that are important to you, the things of value to you, but ultimately what it boils down to, your essence of who you are, that you can define or contain with imagery within a circle. And a circle has a lot of symbolic meaning. I forget that I like to talk with my hands. It has a lot of symbolic meaning in terms of it never ends, so it's always ongoing. Hence, wedding rings, wedding bands are referred to, they're circular in nature, because it's about love that will endure. It's never ending. It has, because a circle has no beginning and no end. Well, the same idea is here as well, is that your life, our lives, they have no real beginning and ending when we're looking at the essence of who we are. And we both thought, what better way to represent these images than within the confines of a circle. So hence the circle. And then I wanted a 2-inch depth on the sides, because when something hangs and you approach and you see it, well, you can sometimes see an image, a painting from the side. So I wanted a nice 2-inch depth, so it looked nice. Whereas a lot of times people will produce panels and they're very shallow, predominantly because they're anticipating that they're going to be framed. So one of the reasons why I love watercolor canvas is I don't have to frame it. When I first started out painting watercolor, I painted on paper. Like most watercolor artists, you use paper. I used printmaking paper, which is the bomb, for doing watercolor. You can get all kinds of detail and impressions, and it holds so much. It's intended to take a beating because it's printmaking paper. You can do a lot to it. Paper matters when it comes to watercolors and what you're going to do. And so I loved doing that, but then became intrigued when I saw something about somebody having done watercolor on canvas because of all the framing that I'd have to have done. When I had my studio, I would host events, and the new artwork that I had done, well, it was framed. Well, it's not an inexpensive endeavor, even if you frame it yourself. The frames, good quality frames, are not cheap, and then the supplies and the materials to properly mount a watercolor image and ensure that it's stable, and all of that comes into play. So it was intriguing to me. I finally got one of these bad boys out without having to rip it out all the way. I was very intrigued with this idea of working watercolor on canvas, because I could have a watercolor image that I don't have to frame. Oh my gosh, that would not only save me time and effort, because I can't host a show until I've had everything framed out. Well, it takes framers time. You have to get on their schedule, and framing is not an inexpensive endeavor. So moving into watercolor canvas allowed me the pleasure of not having to pay to frame. So I'm going to pause because it's going to take me a hot minute to get all the way around this bad boy. So I'm going to pause this video, and then we'll come back when I'm ready to actually start putting the new canvas and wrap the new piece. Okay, so as you can see, I managed to get everything pulled off. Even left some of the staples in. So one of the things to be mindful of is that when you have an art studio is nobody needs to step on these. That is most definitely a tetanus shot waiting to happen. So I usually either remove them individually or I'm going to do what I'm doing right now, which I'm going to wrap this up so that all the staples are on the inside, so if anybody happens to stick their hand into the trash can for whatever random reason, I have small children, they're not going to stab themselves with a rusted out staple. So one of the things that I want you to be able to notice is that this particular canvas, I mentioned that it's a watercolor canvas, it's treated. So the outside has got a treatment on it, and it's that treatment that allows me to be able to do really nice, vibrant watercolors on canvas. Alright, so I'm going to dispose of this into my trash can way over here off camera, and give you the chance to take a look. So here's the board. So you can see some places where some watercolor bled through. But this board, in order to prep these boards, in order to do canvas or anything else over the top of it, is primed with gesso. So I did 2 layers of gesso, one direction, and you can see the brush strokes for the final coat here. You do this including the sides, okay, and along the other inside edges. This on the inside edge, I'm pretty sure I just did 1 coat, and that's just to provide a nice base for excuse me, for the canvas, as well as to protect the board. These boards allow me a great deal of versatility. So while I'm currently, the ones that I'm working on right now are going to be watercolor, should I, in the process of doing some research, determine that I want to do a multimedia piece, or I want to do something different that is not going to require canvas, I can gesso and prime these boards as you see them here and paint directly onto the board. So I like the fact that these are so versatile in that way. So now let's talk about wrapping this canvas. Okay, so I've got my canvas piece here, so I'm going to double check my canvas. And the easiest way to do that is for me to remove my board off to one side, set my canvas face down, and I'm going to have to roll it up a little bit onto and get it centered here. Make sure that I have plenty of space there, space to come around, and space to come around. Alright, so I do indeed. Now, as you're going to be able to see, I have extra. So I'm going to trim and advance some of the extra canvas as it goes around a corner, because you want to kind of reduce some of the bulky pieces. You want this to be as easy to maneuver as possible as you go around. So I'm going to work on these 2 sides first. So when you are stretching a canvas, any canvas, this one happens to be round, but it doesn't matter if it was a rectangular canvas, the idea is the same. You anchor one end, pull and stretch the other side, and get it stapled so that you have built tension this way. Then you're going to rotate your canvas and go in the other direction, and you kind of follow and work that all the way around until your canvas is anchored. Once your canvas is anchored in those areas, then I'm going to worry about tucking and making this as nice and neat as possible. So I'm going to start on this one side. And I'm going to pull my canvas, and because I've got a gallery wrap on this outside edge, it's going to have creases and wrinkles in it. It's not, this is not going to be able to be 100% perfect. So part of what I do is when I'm pulling this tight is I'm also checking to see where my creases and crevices are occurring all along the outside so that I can make sure that I have a nice looking outside edge. So I'm going to get this pulled in and wrapped. I'm just worried about this one section here that's flat. Okay. Staple guns, when you're using it, make sure that you pay attention to where the staples exit from. The last thing you want to do is assume it's coming out from the other end and staple yourself. That's going to hurt. Okay, so here, pull in, and I'm going to have some extra canvas right there. So I want to make sure that that one is good and tight. So I've only done 3 to get that side anchored. And then now I'm going to come across and pull. And I'm going to lift this canvas up off because I want to be able to get a really good pull from this other side, so I can pull as tight as I can. And again, repeating that same idea that I'm going to have some creases and some wrinkles in the canvas, but I want it as tight as I can make it. Okay. And then again, stapling all the way around, except sometimes your staples don't stick. Like that one right there didn't want to stick, so you just kind of come back in and do it again. And when I have ones that don't want to go all the way into the wood, just like I did before, grab something that has some leverage, pull it out. You don't want to leave that. And then this is just a process of working all the way around. Now we're going to come to the other side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull. Again, you just want to make sure it's as tight as possible. Now, this in the round is a little bit of a pain because this is a board. It's not flexing. I don't have a stretcher board, so I can't really see. With stretchers, it's a lot easier. I can see the canvas because the center section is where I'm going to be able to see the canvas, and I'll be able to verify that it's super, super taut. And when you are working with a board that you are stretching canvas on, you don't really have that luxury. Alright, that is good. Now, I did experiment with a whole bunch of different kinds of canvas before I selected and kind of settled on this Frederick's watercolor canvas. Part of me thought, well, okay, if it works on Frederick's watercolor canvas, why not any canvas? Well, okay, to be fair, I have been able to paint on other types of canvas surfaces, but this one looks so much better. Intensity, the color, just everything about it looks better. It's designed for this purpose. It's designed to be used with a watercolor. The others aren't, so you do end up with a little bit of kind of questionable color sometimes. It doesn't want to hold the colors nicely sometimes, so this, given that it's designed specifically for this purpose, I like the way that the color turned out when I used the Frederick's canvas over the just a regular pre-primed canvas. So if you want to experiment in your own art, give it a try. Go get a pre-primed canvas and see if you like it. It's a great place to start before you determine if you want to invest in the Frederick archival watercolor canvas. It's a good place to, it's always a good place to start. Alright, now we're going to start working our way around on the curves. And you're going to see that this is where I hadn't trimmed this side. So I'm going to go ahead and trim up and get rid of some of this bulk here. Because it's not needed. And it'll save me a step later because I am going to go around the inside and trim up anything that isn't left behind. We don't need more than like what you can see right here, this little section, left out at any point in time. Alright, so we're going to do this next section here. Again, you're always pulling in order to get the tightest fit you can around the board. The more taut you can get this, the better. Okay, the tighter the better. As it comes around, you want this canvas board really tight. Now, the more okay, prime example of why you want your staples out is because I was stapling happily away. And I'm like, how come I don't see a staple? Because I ran out of staples. So being able to load more staples in as you move along becomes important. It's always have my supplies. A lot of times we'll have those already all pulled out so that I'm not having to do this later. Alright, can I get all those on there? I don't do this all the time. That's the other downside, is that when you do this, I don't do it all the time. Make sure I am not setting this up wrong. No. Okay. But I can't quite get it best. Alright, so I'm going to have to take off a couple of these. You have to slide in. I'm sure some of you have like a newer version. Ugh, there we go. Almost. Okay, except it would help if I could remember how this is supposed to go in, which clearly I do not remember. Memory serves. There's always more than one way to do something, and I need to take off one more of these. I am sure somebody out there actually knows how to do this properly, and I'm doing it the hard way. So, Alright, so I got my staples now, but I can load it in so that now I can actually staple this. So I'm going to have to go back in. And, oh, I am so sorry. I just realized that all of that was off camera, so that was brilliant, wasn't it? Well, you have to excuse me and my video skills. It's a work in progress. Sometimes I think that we all stop and we don't do things because we feel like it has to be perfect. I've learned life isn't perfect. And if we think that we are going to achieve perfection, we're a lot of times lying to ourselves. Oi. And now I've got one that's stuck. That also happens, and it's a great way to end up stabbing myself later. So I'm going to try to use this screwdriver to get some leverage to remove this one, which I may or may not get in the moment, which I'm not, so I'm just going to move on. Alright, Remember what I said? You always go to an opposite side. So we're going to rotate this around, opposite side. It is kind of messing up. Okay, so just so y'all know, this is paper towels that I had set up underneath. So I cover my work surface with paper towels because I'm about to work with watercolor. And I really don't want it getting on my floor in my studio because my studio is basically, you know, houses have a formal living room and a formal dining room. And we don't really use things like that anymore. So those spaces have been converted in my home to be my studio. So it's a nice floor surface. I do not wish to ruin it by having water drip all over it. So I do my best to protect that, and I can do that the best by protecting my work surface and covering it in paper towels. The paper towels absorb the water and absorb the paint so that it doesn't end up all over my floor. Alright. So as I get further and further around, I use far more staples. I will go back in and add more staples to the sections that I start out with, where I only kind of put in 3. As I move further and further around the board, it becomes a little bit easier to add those additional staples in order to kind of anchor the painting, or anchor the canvas anyway. Boy. So you got to use some arm strength, especially because this is round and it's not as clear cut as if you were simply working with a rectangular or square canvas. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and staple in these areas where I had originally gotten started. And let's move to this section. So this kind of helps as you kind of keep pushing and pulling. And y'all, this is kind of part of an artist's life is, oh, what'd you do today? Oh, I stretched yet another canvas. And, oh, well, that doesn't seem like that would take very long. Yeah, so if you're doing it yourself, it takes time. And this is part of what you have to account for when you are managing the business end of being an artist. All right, so one of the reasons why I pay attention is I'm going to pull these out. All right, I just put these 2 staples in, but I am noticing that I need a little bit, I need this to be a little tighter around this crease because it's wanting to open up along the side and it's not giving me a very good image along the side. So I want to pull that real tight and then restaple. There we go. That's much better. And I'm going to have the same thing there. Pull that tight. And pull that tight. Alright, now let's go to the opposite sides here because it looks like I already did that side over there. And just need to finalize this one. So, watercolor canvas has been a lot of fun to work with. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. I shared that, you know, if I make a mistake, I can just wash it off, which is typically pretty true. As long as I don't wait a couple of months before I try to remove the original paint. It can be far more forgiving than working on paper, which is kind of nice, especially when I'm looking at some of these ideas that I have that are going to be far more detailed for this series. So that gives me the ability to take mistakes into happy accidents, to borrow Bob Ross a little bit there. You know, a lot of times as an artist, especially when I wasn't working in just watercolor, you know, you'd find out that you'd make, you know, something that wasn't quite what you had expected to have happen, and yet it turned out to be a happy accident. You have to embrace those, because oftentimes what we're going to consider to be a mistake, nobody else is going to notice. We're far more critical on ourselves. I'm going to take another attempt to remove. I got it. See if I can't remove that one piece there. All right, and here's that other corner that I did not do and trim out. So we're going to do that here real quickly. Now, some of you may be like at this point, okay, thanks, I'm kind of tired of watching this chick wrap a canvas. Oh my goodness, is that all there is to it? Well, this is kind of the beginning. When you spend time, especially, you know, when you're an artist, there are things that you do as part of your craft. And this is one of them. Yes, I can buy a pre-made canvas these days. I even went and found, I can't find a 24-inch round, 2-inch depth gallery canvas that's wrapped like this. They do make panel boards that are 24 inches. They're shallower. They're only 7/8 of an inch. Which I may end up having to use. God help me if I have to try to do a round frame. I don't even want to know. Because, again, canvas is, some people say, well, you know, just frame it, it'd be easier. But framing, good quality framing, okay? And I guess therein lies the difference. Good quality framing is good quality framing. It's like paying for good quality painting. It's not going to be an inexpensive endeavor. It's going to cost you. You pay what you get, you know, you pay for what you get. And being able to wrap your canvas is kind of goes along with the choices, right? This is going to be, it's a piece of art. It's coming, it starts with you in your mind. You have an idea and you continue to bring it to life by how you choose to do it. You know, am I going to use a canvas that's already done? And if so, is it the size that I want? Is it going to have the characteristics? What kind of canvas did they use? How is it prepped? How is it primed? If you're an acrylic artist, an oil artist, all of those things matter. And sometimes there is the small joy and the small pleasures that come from wrapping your own canvas. In my instance, I didn't really have much of a choice. Trying to find something that's a canvas that's round is, well, if you find one, please, by all means, drop a comment and tell me where. A 24-inch round canvas, I would dearly love to know, because it is a time saver. So keep in mind that, you know, wrapping it yourself versus finding it, if you can find what you're looking for and save yourself the time so you can enjoy painting what you want to paint, by all means, man, knock your socks off. But I'll also tell you that you try it at least once. You might get hooked on it. I know I did. One of the things from college is that, you know, this is where I learned to wrap a canvas. They don't talk about wrapping around canvas, but they do talk to you about wrapping a canvas. And, you know, you can purchase your own and do this. And here's the advantages, right? The pros and cons. And I just loved the idea. It's kind of the thinking, the priming the pump, if you will, before you get down to painting, because you're fiddling with the canvas, you're getting it to lay right, you're pulling and stretching and, you know, making sure that it's going to be the way you want it to be. You know, I'm not a machine. I cannot make this as tight as a machine would. However, I don't want it to be. I'm not a machine. Well, not that I'm aware of. There we go. And being able to do this kind of helps me get started and thinking through, letting my brain kind of process what I want to do next. Because there's one more step after this one that will then get my canvas prepped and ready for me to do what I need to do. And guys, we're on the last section. How awesome is that? And so, yeah. Well, as you can tell, as we get down here to the last part, wrapping a canvas is not super complicated. It's just a process of time, stretching and pulling and stapling, okay? The supplies needed are minimal. And there we go. Once you get the last, here we go. This might be the last one. I'm going to double check here. I'm going to check for any gaps. And you'll see in just a moment why I want to make sure that it's all nicely anchored. Because when you stretch a canvas, it's not just about the canvas being attached. All right, here we go. When we finish stretching a canvas, we're going to add water, okay? And that water is going to do the final process of tightening this canvas up for us. So that's pretty nice. All right, so I'm going to trim some of this down now that I've got this on here. And then I'll go grab some water so that I can show you the final step. I like the final step, it's kind of fun. And then, like all watercolor, you have to wait for water to dry in order to move on and do your next steps. It's good times that. You know, that old adage, if it's boring to watch paint dry, yeah. And watercolor, there are times when you just have to, you're going to have to pause because you've got to literally wait for your paint to dry before you can do another layer or add another piece. So you've stuck with me this long. So one, I'm impressed. If you've moved on to something else, yeah, it's just the way of things. And here we go. Almost done. There we go. All right, so canvas is good and wrapped all the way around. Let's turn it over so you can see, so that now I have this nice, brand new, clean work surface. I'm going to go through the final ingredient and be right back. All right, so I'm back with my mystery ingredient. It's ever exciting. It's water. I bet you didn't see that one coming. Okay, yeah, the jokes don't get better. Anyway, so once you have a watercolor canvas wrapped, one of the things that you're going to want to do is finish the stretching process, and that is going to involve water. So this is frankly one of my absolute favorite watercolor brushes in the entire world, so it might still have a little color in it. This is a Robert Simmons Sky Flow. It's a wash brush, and I'm literally going to just wash water over this whole thing. And it will, once it is dry, it will then tighten up and make this beautifully taut surface for me to paint on for the next image. Now, a lot of times, guys, I will prep a bunch of these. I will do this ahead of time. I'll do like 2 or 3 at a time because it can be kind of unwieldy and it's kind of labor intensive. It's not the favorite part of any artist is to go around stretching canvases. Well, it is meditative, but you know, I like to paint. And so getting to do the painting part is what I'm excited about. Prepping a canvas, So here we go. We are going to leave that on there and let that dry. And then I will have a canvas that I can use. So I hope you learned a little something today. And look forward to seeing you come back for the next time. Have a great day.